Okay, we're live, and I looked at this. Debbie, I looked at my thing last week, and man, that camera adds 10, 15, 20 pounds, because I can't be as big as what it looked like on that camera, but I guess maybe I am. Well, as I said, I enjoy reading through the scripture. I enjoy reading the scripture, and I also enjoy reading now maybe some history that is connected to it. So it's not just reading the scripture for me. I want to go a little deeper or a little wider. So, by the way, if you're watching, we're on Esther, is where we are tonight. And I don't know how long it'll take to go through here. If it doesn't take but 15 minutes, then class will be over in 15 minutes, just so you know, okay? Because that's the only thing I have prepared tonight. But I was reading through here, and I saw one of the things that struck me, this right there in verse 1, chapter 1, verse 1, where these events took place during the days of Ahasuerus, who ruled 127 provinces from India to Cush. So I'm reading that, and I've heard of Ahasuerus in other places in Scripture. He's in Daniel. The name Ahasuerus is in Daniel, chapter 9, I think it was.
Is that what you're saying? And it's X-E-R-X-E-N?
Okay, let me get there.
Okay.
Let me get there.
Okay.
Because in some Scripture, it says Xerxes. Is that what yours has?
Yeah.
Yours, okay, well, that's fine. Mine says Ahasuerus. Again, I know this. I know this is an issue right there. I know that's there because I've read it Xerxes in other translations. So as I'm reading, I go, okay, so who is this, and what is the difference? So this is where my brain kicks in and wants to figure out what it is that's going on. Ahasuerus is the Hebrew. Xerxes is the Greek. So in the Greek translation of the Old Testament, Xerxes is what you'll find. But that opened up a whole new thing of trying to figure out what was going on here, what was being explained, because some of them say that Ahasuerus and Xerxes are the same person. Other writings say two different ones, that they're different people. Ahasuerus or Xerxes is mentioned 3 different times in Daniel, in Ezra, and in Esther. And some scholars, I'll give them that credit of scholarship, say the same person at one point in time they were the same person, but not really anymore. It's believed to be 3 different people. The name Ahasuerus, as I have it in here, Xerxes, Ahasuerus, means chief or prince. Okay, so it has a title of distinction, royalty that's connected to it. So it would be like, as it was described to me, Xerxes would be that claim as well. Like the kings of England, how they would take the same names as their ancestral kings would, as a term of respect. And so the Ahasuerus here in Esther is not the same one as the one in Ezra or the same one as in Daniel. The one that's in Ezra is the one who stopped the work of the temple being rebuilt because of the rumor that was sent to him by those who opposed the temple being rebuilt to begin with, which doesn't coincide with this Ahasuerus, who has no issue with it being built. So there are distinctions that are there that are being done. So I'm trying to lay that out. And as I'm reading through here, your brain can just get overwhelmed with what you're trying to read. Some time back, see, let me just lay this out here, and now I'm not saying yay or nay to this, okay? So don't hear me say yay or nay, whether I agree with this or not agree with this, but there are some who hold to the idea that Esther is a fictional writing, that it's not actual historical writing, because, first of all, there's no mention of God in this writing here at all. But the style of writing that's in this storyline is real similar to the writing styles of fictional writing during this period of history, during this period of time. And the story purposes for that, I mean, the fictional writing was done in order to convey a certain particular message, which is what Esther does as well. I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't know. I'm not going to take that as being true, that it's a fictional writing. This is one of the very last writings that was included in the Old Testament canon of Scripture. When I say canon of Scripture, that's the approved writings by leadership of that time of the church or whatever, during that period of history. But Esther is one of the last ones to come in. And I think that's probably because of the style of writing that was there. When we look at who they are, what's going on here, well, the story that's being told, there's also a thing that's happening right here with the names. There are two main characters here is Esther and her uncle Mordecai. Mordecai is the one who took Esther to raise after her parents were killed. But his age doesn't coincide with the Babylonian captivity. If you look at him, Mordecai, I have to find him in here, but it tells who he is, and that he's the son of this one. How they do in Scripture, son of this one, of this one, of this one, of this one. If Mordecai was part of the Babylonian captivity, he would have to be over 100 years old, which is not likely in this one. It's more likely Cush, Kush, his great-great-grandfather, somewhere up in there, who was in captivity, and so Mordecai's a younger man here. Esther is the other one. Now, let me throw something else out there, even as we talk about this. And this probably lends itself toward being a fictional writing. And again, I'm not saying that it is. Please don't hear me say that it is, because I'm not saying that it's a fictional writing. But what I'm saying is that the two names, Mordecai and Esther, translated over, have been connected with the name Marduk and Ishtar. Mordecai, Marduk, Esther, Ishtar. These are fictional gods of Greek culture. I've talked about Ishtar before. Her being, in the Greek, Ishtar was Aphrodite. The names that are there. So again, it's one of those, okay, let's figure out what this writing is. So we can make up all kinds of things to try to figure out who everybody is and what's going on. The storyline is the redemption of the Jewish people, is the salvation. Let me say not redemption, but the salvation of the Jewish people. Because you have this king, Ahasuerus or Xerxes, and which, by the way, scholars debate on whether it's Xerxes I, senior, Xerxes Junior, or okay. So we're taking names. We're doing names of recognizing my father was a king. Ahasuerus is the chief. He's the prince. Therefore, I'm taking the same name. So trying to figure out historically I wanted to, my objective was to try to date it. When was this written? Oh my goodness. It was, most of them say around the 4th century, somewhere in the 4th century BC. 300s in there somewhere. I don't know that that's true either. I have no idea because they change it. There's dates that are changing there. But you have King Ahasuerus or King Xerxes who's over these 127 provinces from India to Kush. And that is also connected to kingship there for the territorial aspect of it. That's dated at a certain time. This Ahasuerus, this particular one here, was not very good in battles based upon his history. Wasn't very good in battles. Lost several campaigns. Won some campaigns. All that's there. But he's holding this feast in the 3rd year of his reign for all the officials and the staff, which, by the way, it says the army of Persia and Media. That actually happened, but it was designed from the victory of a campaign that took place, a military campaign that took place, and all these military leaders, they won this great victory, and they're celebrating. That was a historical event. So that part's true. Now, at the end of the time, as it tells us here, that he's throwing this banquet, a week-long banquet in the courtyard. All this stuff is there, and all the decorations and the trappings of splendor that are there. All this, there's drinks are being served regularly. There's alcohol. The wine is flowing. No restrictions for this. All this is taking place. Queen Vashti, which we don't find her historically. We don't find her name in the history out there. We do find her name or a connection to her name under Hindu religion. But not the same person there. Anyway. So she's given a feast as well. On the 7th day, it says, when the king was feeling good, there in verse 10, the king was feeling good from the wine. He commanded all these eunuchs, the 7 eunuchs who personally served him, to bring Queen Vashti before him with her royal crown. He wanted to show off her beauty to the people and the officials because she was very beautiful. Let me tell you what that means. He wanted her naked. Okay? He wanted her to parade her. He wanted to parade her in front of all his military people, all these leaders, all these generals, he wanted to show off her beauty because he said she was beautiful. He wanted to show her off. Verse 12 says, she said, ain't happening. That's basically what it was. He's drunk, wants to show her off. And she says, nope, ain't coming. Which stirs up a whole issue. Because then it's going to make him look bad. Because she says no from the king's order. She refused the king's order. And it's going to make him look bad in front of all these generals, all these military people, all these leaders from other countries that are there. It's going to make him look bad. And so he seeks out. We won't have to go through the names, but in verse 14, all these names that are there, these were the 7 officials of Persia and Media who had personal access to the king, occupied highest position in the kingdom, and he asked them, according to the law, what should be done to her. And Memucan said she's wronged there in verse 16. Queen Vashti is wronged not only the king, but all the officials and the peoples who are in every one of King Ahasuerus' provinces. Queen's actions will become public knowledge to all the women and cause them to despise their husbands and say, King Ahasuerus ordered Queen Vashti brought before him, but she did not come. It's basically said, this word's going to get out. And when they realized that Queen Vashti didn't have to that she refused you, then they're going to want to have their way as well, you know. And verse 18, before this day is over, the noble women of Persian media who hear about the queen's act will say the same thing to all the king's officials, resulting in more contempt and fury. So what he says is, strip her of her status. So she's no longer queen. He agrees to this. He took the advice of these officials. You know, if you read through Scripture, when you read through Scriptures, there's a number of occasions when the kings take advice from nobles or officials that's not good advice. It doesn't pan out the way it was supposed to. So this decree is issued, and what they're going to do is get into chapter 2. Debbie, let's kind of set the story up. So starting in chapter 2, read verse 1 and 2.
Later, when the anger of King Xerxes had subsided, he remembered
Vashti,
and what she had done and what he had decreed about her. Then the king's personal attendants proposed, let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king.
Go ahead, one more.
Let the king appoint commissioners in every province of his realm to bring all these beautiful girls into the harem at the citadel. Of Susa.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, go ahead, finish it out.
Let them be placed under the care of Haggai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let beauty treatments be given to them.
Okay, all right. What stands out for me right there to begin with is that when the king's anger or his rage had cooled down, he remembered what he had done. Now, I look at that, I'm thinking, okay, so all this king's decree, all this counsel, all this done is in his anger. He's angry about what's happened. These counselors, they're advising him under that same guise. You know, here's what you ought to do. He's mad about it, upset, and so, but sometime later, I don't know how much later this is, but historically, this also coincides with this particular king, historically when he is the development, so to speak, of a harem. Because it didn't really exist prior, but after these big battles and such, the development of a harem starts to take place as well. So there's some accuracy, there's some accurate things historically go there, and there's some other things that seems like they've been maybe blended in. I'm not sure if that's what the case is, what the case may be. At any rate, his anger has subsided. He remembers Vashti, he remembers what she had done, and what was decided against her. And I'm thinking, did you forget this? It also shows the relationship that the queen has, or what her status is. She's not really, I mean, she's part of the royal group right there, but she's been appointed as this. He's picked her as this position, but she doesn't have rights like he does. Like she bears the name queen, but it's not. She's not sitting on a royal throne beside him like you would see the Queen of England or someone. You know, that's our image, but that's not their reality. You know, matter of fact, you read later on that if the queen comes to the courtyard, if the king does not lower his scepter toward her, which means come on in, if he doesn't lower his scepter toward her, she's violated her status in his courtyard and could be taken out and killed. So it's different. It's a whole different status right here. Whole different, you know. Court gives a whole different meaning to husband and wife. Okay. Sometimes I think the role is reversed now. You know, where we're asked, "Can I come into your presence now? Is it okay if I come talk to you about you?" Yeah, at any rate, so there, that's what's happening right there. And so then the young women, as it tells us, the young woman who pleases the king will become queen instead of Vashti. And the suggestion pleased the king, and he did accordingly. So he's taking the advice of someone here about what needs to be done, and this is what they're going to do. So he's just going to replace Vashti. She's out of the picture, basically, at this point. She's been taken out of the picture as far as her role is concerned. And so she's no longer there. And it's not even a bring her back, let's restore her. We're just going to replace her at this point. This is what we're going to do. And so this is when we're introduced in this citadel, or the fortress of Susa, this Jewish man named Mordecai. Now here's where we learn. Mordecai, son of Jair, son of Shammai, son of Kish, a Benjaminite. Okay, so we're looking at different generations right here, or different, the father's son, father's son, father's son. Kish is probably the Benjamite who was taken into captivity 50 years ago prior. So you have, and I don't know how Kish is at this point, but Mordecai is probably not the one who went into captivity. He was probably born in captivity. That's probably what he knows, and has been part of the group that's been brought back, or is taken captive in Susa. He's there in their land as a Jewish slave is where he would be. So that's what's going on there. See, he's been taken into exile from Jerusalem with the other captives when King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon took King Jeconiah of Judah into exile. So again, it's like when you talk about David. We could be talking about somebody being the son of David, but he may be 10 generations down, but he's still the son of David. And so you have this right here. You have Mordecai, son of Jair, son of Shammai, son of Kish. You have 3 generations that are right there. And he had been taken into exile. Well, if he was, he might have been an infant. If we're talking about Mordecai, he might have been an infant at that time. So he may be, but he is old enough that he's the one, he's the legal guardian. In verse 7, he's the legal guardian of his cousin Hadassah, that is Esther. Her real name is Hadassah. That's her Hebrew name. Because she had no father or mother. She's very pretty. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her as his own daughter. So there's going to be an age difference right there, probably. So he's a little older than her. I don't know how much older. Okay, so the king gives his edict, and they start collecting girls. We're going to build the harem. And what they did was they had to spend, in order to come before the king, they had to bathe. I think they bathed daily for like 6 months in perfumed, what is it? The bath bubbles, whatever, the bubble bath type stuff. The oils, the fragrant oils, and so that it would soak into the skin. So they would bathe daily in that way. And then they would spend 6 months being perfumed, having a perfume that's put on them. So it would be a lot of time before they ever came to the king, because the fragrance had to be. I jokingly talk about this when I was at high school. My first big job in high school, I worked at Shoney's, and I smelled like grease all the time. I could bathe it, and I could still smell it. It got in your pores. It was just there. And that was the idea right here on the good side. So they wanted you to smell good, we come before the king. And so they did. And Esther was taken under the supervision of Haggai, and he liked her. Corey, chapter 2, verse 9. Read verse 9 to begin with.
She pleased him and won his favor. Immediately he provided her with her beauty treatments and special food. He assigned to her 7 female attendants selected from the king's palace, and moved her and her attendants into the best place in the harem.
Go ahead and read the next one.
Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background
I see that and I'm thinking, her looks, maybe they didn't look that much different than each other. What if there's a Hispanic that comes through, we know they don't look like this old pale white boy here. I know there's a difference. If they're Chinese, they don't look. But maybe these folks kind of had the similar things, so she could get by with not telling them that she was a Jew, because as a Jew she was a slave. She would have been a slave status. So she didn't reveal who she was. Every day Mordecai would walk in front of the harem, the courtyard. He would learn what was going on, how Esther was doing, what was happening to her. And so there in verse 12, pick it up right there, that during the year before each woman's turn to go to the king, as with the harem's regulation, required her to receive beauty treatments with oil and of myrrh for 6 months, and then her perfumes of cosmetics for another 6 months. I knew that was in the scripture somewhere. I knew I'd read that. So she gets to take this bubble bath in specific oils for 6 months, and then cosmetics, perfumes and cosmetics for another 6 months. We're going to get you looking good. You're going to be smelling good. You're going to be looking good. And when they would go to the king, that they were given whatever she requested from the harem, from that group, whatever to take with them there. She would go in the evening, and the morning would return. And if he liked her, he might ask her to come back. She never went to. The thing about it is, this is what's unique about this harem situation, is that they spend a year getting ready. They go spend the night with the king, may or may not have anything going on, but if he doesn't approve, then she never goes. But she spent a year for one night and may never, ever go back again. And I don't know what the status would be. I don't know if they're released at that point. I have no idea what the status would be at that point. But at any rate, Hadassah, Esther is chosen. You read in verse 15, Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who adopted her as his own daughter. When her turn came to go to the king, she did not ask for anything except what Haggai, the king's eunuch, keeper of the women, suggested. Esther gained favor in the eyes of everyone who saw her. And he liked her. Verse 17, the king loved Esther more than all the other women. She won more favor and approval from him than did any of the other virgins. He placed the royal crown on her head and made her queen in place of Vashti. And then he held a great banquet in her honor. And he freed his provinces from tax payments and gave gifts worthy of the king's bounty. Yay. So Esther is in. That's just how it worked. He picked her, and that was it. Nothing else. She becomes queen. Unknowns to him, to the king, that she is Jew, that she is Jewish. He doesn't know that, which I find kind of amazing that that's the case, that he's not told. But I guess he assumes that she's from Susa and not from Jerusalem. So they're gathered. Here's a pickup, Debbie, right there in verse 21. Here's where the storyline turns a little bit.
During the time Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's officers, regarded the doorway, became angry, and conspired to assassinate King Xerxes.
Go ahead.
But Mordecai found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported it to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. Okay.
So this is written down. This is verified. And these two eunuchs, or these two officers, they're hanged on the gallows. It's recorded in the historical record of the king's presence. Okay, so, and that's significant. It may not sound like much right there, but this event was recorded in the historical record in the king's presence. So that becomes significant later on. And after all this took place, you get into chapter 3. King Ahasuerus, King Xerxes, honored Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. Now that's a whole other story in that of itself. If I go all the way back, historically, in the scripture, into Samuel with King Saul and Samuel, if you remember the story, Saul was waiting for Samuel to come and bless the military before he went on to this military campaign. And then Samuel decided he couldn't wait, and he went, he did the blessing himself, and he went and he defeated the enemy that he was facing there, but he kept the king alive. And Agag was his name. Okay? This is a descendant of the direct line. In Samuel's declaration against Saul and the Israelites was there was always going to be war, or there was always going to be an issue between them in this line. Haman is in that direct line. He's in that line of descendants that are there. Which just is another thing that it's just there is this continual thing that happens here, and the enemy is always present. There's always some sort of enemy that's there, and so the king is honoring him, honoring Haman. The entire royal staff, they've bowed down. Here's the thing about it is the entire, very in verse 2 of chapter 3, the entire royal staff at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to him because the king had commanded them this to be done for him. But Mordecai would not bow down or pay homage. Mordecai refused. Why? He's not bowing down to any man. He bows down to God. And that's it. It's kind of like what Daniel would say when they accused him of going against the king because he prayed when everybody said you're supposed to pray to the king or to this idol. And Daniel said, nope, there's only one place I pray. Here's what Mordecai is saying, the same thing. Why they ask him there in verse 3, why are you disobeying the king's command? And they warned him day after day, and he still would not listen to them. They told Haman in order to see if Mordecai's actions would be tolerated, since he had told them he was a Jew. And he said, I'm not bowing down to a man. I'm not bowing down to a man. It's not how it works. That's not how this works. And so you get down to verse 8. Corey, pick up right there and read a little bit right there for us.
Then Haman said to King Xerxes, there is a certain people dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom who keep themselves separate. Their customs are different from those of all other people, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them.
Go ahead. One more.
If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will give 10,000 talents of silver to the king's administrators for the royal treasury.
Okay. If it pleases the king, destroy them. Not just those that are right there in Susa. This is let's destroy all of them. Again, it's the battle against the Israelites and the enemy. Just like back in in Samuel's day, in the military campaign. Go back even further when God spoke to Moses and said, when you enter the land, annihilate everybody in your path. Men, women, children, oxes, goats, lamb, whatever. Annihilate it. But you read through Joshua, as I was reading through Joshua this morning, and I guess I'd highlighted it from last year when I was reading through there, but there are places throughout Joshua where it says, but they didn't drive this group out. They didn't get rid of these people. They couldn't defeat these people because they were determined to stay. And so there was always a remnant of people of the enemy that stayed in the land, even though they were told not to let them stay. But they did. They let them stay in the land. And what you have, as long as you let the enemy stay in the land, you're going to have battles. Hear me? You hear me? As long as you let the enemy stay in the land, you're going to have battles. And it doesn't matter who it is or whatever. So this is what it is. So there in verse 10, the king took off his ring, gave it to Haman, stamp of approval, gave him the money. Here it is. And they set the date when it was supposed to happen. And the guys took off riding to all the various provinces. Letters were sent, verse 13, letters were sent by couriers to each of the royal provinces, telling the officials to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jewish people, young and old, women and children, and plunder their possessions on a single day, the 13th day of Adar, the 12th month. Now, that's how mine read, but still. A copy of the text issued as law throughout every province. If the king put his stamp on it, that was law, and it could not be revoked. Couldn't just say no. So the couriers left there in verse 15, spurred on by royal command, and the law was issued in the fortress of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink while the city of Susa was in confusion. And you get into, and so the plot is thickening. Now, if this is all fiction, it's really good fiction. You know, this is a good storyline that's taking place here. And it's all this is about the salvation of the Jewish culture, of saving the Jews. This is what's going to happen. But you got to know what's going to take place here to begin with, what's happening, who this is, if you know the history of what's going on. There's always been war. There's always been a battle. There's always been enemy, uprising against the Jewish people right here. And so here's happening again. You get into chapter 4, and Mordecai has learned about this. He's learned about what's going on. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, went in the middle of the city, cried loudly, and wept bitterly. He went only as far as the king's gate, since the law prohibited anyone from wearing sackcloth from entering the king's gate. And there was great mourning among the Jewish people in every province where the king's command and edict came. I'm not 100% sure that King Xerxes even realized what he had commanded. I'm not sure he fully realized what the law was that he was saying, what he was offering out, handing his ring over. Because when the king gave his ring over to whoever was in charge, they took that ring and that was used as law. Because, he'd take the wax and put it on there and stamp the ring. His ring is on there. And Haman kept the ring. Haman had the ring. Xerxes gave him the ring to keep because he's like second guy in charge now. And so a lot of weeping, a lot of confusion, because the people are about to be, these Jewish people who have been living under the captivity they've been living under captivity for years. It's just a way of life. And so now, Queen Esther, she sent clothes to Mordecai, change your clothes, put on something nice, but he wouldn't do it. And she didn't know what was going on. She didn't know what was happening. As a matter of fact, it tells us there, Debbie, pick up verse 5 of chapter 4.
Then Esther summoned.
Yeah, just say what you can.
One of the king's eunuchs assigned to attend her and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why.
So go ahead, one more.
So that man went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate.
One more.
Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money that Haman had proposed to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews.
Yeah. She didn't know what was going on, so Mordecai said, here's what's going on. Haman's going to pay like 750 tons of silver. Is what it's going to be. He's going to pay all that silver to put it in the treasury just so he can kill all these Jews, so he can eradicate the Jews. Well, his family's been trying to do that for years. Well, here's a good shot at it right here. Because Mordecai would not bow down and honor Haman. It's just an excuse. So he told him everything was going on. Sent a written decree there. Back in verse 10, Esther spoke to Hathach and commanded him to tell Mordecai what to do right here. And he wants her to, they're sending messages back and forth. It's like Messenger. You know, they're only doing it by person because he didn't have the phone to send a message back and forth. Couldn't talk that way, so they're sending messengers back and forth. He wants her to go and plead with the king. And right there, let's see. Let me just read it. All the royal officials and the people of the royal provinces know that one law applies to every man or woman who approaches the king in their inner courtyard and who has not been summoned, the death penalty, unless the king extends the gold scepter, allowing that person to live. She says, I have not been summoned to appear before the king for at least 30 days. Okay, so that tells you right there. This is what the relationship is. She's queen, but she hadn't seen the king in a month. Because that's not her role, you know, to stand by his side. Her role is to when I call you, you come. When I want you to come, when I need you to show up, and I'll, you know, you handle what I want you to handle. But other than that, I don't have to. You know, remember, he's got a harem.
Right.
She's not fulfilling physical needs on like, you know, husband and wife normal relationship would be. He's just doing. There. So he says, Esther's response was reported to Mordecai. So somebody comes back and tells her, oh, this is what's going on. Man, it's 7:30. Gosh. Okay, we'll stop there. Obviously, we have to stop because the bell's rung. So we'll stop there. We'll pick up 4.5 and 5 when we come back next time. So thank you all for being here. And thank you for being online with us as well. And let me see if I can shut this off.